Welcome to another exciting episode of the Film Mandate, where I bring to you movie reviews, news, and reactions both from the African front and the international scene. My name is Papa Otu, and thank you for joining me for this special episode. It is special because I'm going to do, just take a look at some of the very first reactions and reviews of Superman, which undoubtedly is one of the most anticipated films of 2025. So there's been some early screenings of Superman, particularly from what Amazon and DC did together by offering early ticket sales to Amazon Prime members to buy them to watch it in the cinemas. And already they've done so, and the reviews are trickling in. So, what exciting time it is to take a look at what James Gunn Superman has to offer, particularly with regards to the reboots they are doing for DCU, not a DCEU, but DCU, to kickstart it on a different of clean slate, even though aspects or some characters from possibly from the old DCEU might show up. What we know of is that Peacemaker is still within this universe, but beyond that, majority or a lot of the characters are entirely different. And there's been so many, those who have watched it have come up with quite interesting views concerning the this Superman, and perhaps how different it is from the past iterations of Superman. So let's just delve into the very first story, which was published in the Hollywood Reporter. And I thought I would bring this up so that we take a look at it, and then move from there. So in the Hollywood Reporter, it says that Superman, what the critics are saying. So the James Gunn film starring David Corenswet has the superhero uh, as the superhero releases in theaters July 11, which is tomorrow. But there are a lot of early screenings going all over the world. So this is written by Lexi Carson, and then it says that Superman officially hits theaters this Friday, but the reviews are already pouring in. A film directed by DC Studio co-CEO James Gunn kicks off the new DC universe with a superhero. Superman sees David Corenswet Twister's Pale as the title character, and as Clark Kent, a reporter for the Daily Planet. The role has previously been played by Christopher Reeve, Henry Cavill, Brandon Routh, and Tyler Hoechlin, among others. Rachel Brosnahan, the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, House of Cards, plays his love interest and journalist. Lois Lane and Nicholas Hoult, Nosferatu, Juror Number Two, portrays the villain Lex Luthor. So at the film's early premiere on Monday, Gunn mentioned what he hoped to show differently in this superhero. I wanted to believe Superman, so I wanted to show him in this gigantic DC universe, this magical world that's like from the comic books, where we are entering how I entered as a child, with Superman, with superhuman friends, with giant robots, with kaiju, with all of that. Gunn said, I wanted to have that, but at the same time, really get to know him, get to know his personality, who he is, what his relationship with Lois is like, what his beliefs are, and what his strengths are, what his flaws are. So that is really in depth as to how James Gunn approached it. That's really interesting. So Superman has an 85% rating on Rotten Tomatoes as of Wednesday below. As of Wednesday. So below, see what the critics are saying about the film. So this is what. Let's get into this, and it's quite exciting. Some of the views they share. So the Hollywood Reporter's chief film critic David Rooney praised Corenswet and Brosnahan's performance in his review. So this is what he says. David Corenswet makes an outstanding Superman Clark Kent. His performance loaded with self-irony, charm, and poignant vulnerability as he wrestles with doubts as to whether his mission to do good and protect humankind was based on a lie. Corenswet's funny, scrappy rapport with the Rachel Brosnahan's whip smart Lois Lane, possibly the sharpest and most captivating interpretation of the Ace Daily Planet reporter since Margot Kidder, makes their every scene together a delight. For the film as a whole, he said, Gun Superman is overloaded, even muddled at times, but relentlessly entertaining. Perhaps its biggest strength is that it sidesteps all the revisionist mech of superheroes on screen in the last decade or two and reverts almost to an enchanting state of childlike wonder. So that's quite an interesting review. And yes, the what I've heard so far about this reviews are almost on the same plane as the Hollywood Reporter David Rooney has described, and is more or less on this very same trajectory where you have um, the, there's something about it that looks very entirely different from most of the iterations of the Superman films that has preceded it. And just as he said, that childlike wonder, that enchanting aspect of the film that draws you in compared to the other ones. And for I mean, I watched a review of Robert Meyer Burnett, and he spoke about how different it is from every other superhero film that you would see. It is not the old DCU, or DCEU or any other films that have preceded it, but it's also not Marvel. It sort of occupies its own bubble. But one of the things that most people can attest to is the fact that it is it feels really like a comic book film. It feels really like a comic book film. Neither isn't It's not grounded in reality, in the said reality, or like the Christopher Nolan's or what the Man of Steel also sought to achieve. Neither is this in the fantastical realm as some of Marvel films portrayed, but it also occupies its own bubble with its own, in its own world of enchantment and fantasy, and it feels very different. But what they can all talk about, I mean, the thorough line of all is that everyone praised the David Corenswet and Richard Brosnan's performance and their chemistry together. So it is quite exciting to see what David Rooney said, and it is, yeah, and it's really really so. So let's go further. So the New York Times movie critic says that Alisa, that is Wilkinson, wrote in a review that by all of these measures, Gunn's charming take on the Superman myth succeeds. It's even won over a particular superhero weary critic. It's a sincere but also goofy movie with a few well-timed twists on the mythology and a couple of added characters who keep things light at just the right moments. She later in a review added, and most of all, there's Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane, a woman who doesn't really need saving, who is preternaturally calm in the face of breaking news and knows, contra most female reporters in the movies, how to actually grill a source regardless of her personal feelings about the story. So maybe this Superman is set in the real world after all. Yeah, and that is Alisa Wilkinson's review. And yeah, from what she's saying, at least if you've watched the trailers, particularly where Lois Lane was interviewing Superman, this this review by the New York Times critic actually speaks to that, because when you watch that particular trailer, you realize that in as much as Rachel Brosnahan's character Lois Lane is in love with the Corenswet's Superman or Clark Kent, when it comes to her job as a journalist, all feelings are out of the window. She goes all in to really, get the truth out, or to get, to get the whatever she wants from her interviewee. And that is really different. You had from the other iterations, they were all, interesting, especially Lois Lane, when he didn't know Clark Kent yet. She went in without journalistic instinct, but on the point of getting to know Clark Kent and understanding where Clark Kent is coming from, she sort of empathizes with Clark Kent and Superman. But here in this case, it's not like Richard Brosnan's character doesn't empathize, but she takes it from the point of playing the devil's advocate to really drive home the point that in as much as I may empathize with you, the government and other agencies will not care about that. This is how they will come across to question you or query you concerning your actions in trying to save the world. And that is quite interesting. So it's of no surprise that Alicia Wilkinson is saying that maybe after all, perhaps Richard Brosnahan's character, Lois Lane, is the anchor to the reality that perhaps the film in general doesn't portray. So that's quite an interesting review, and it speaks right to the heart of what Lois Lane character is about. Let's go further to Collider senior editor, which says that that is Ross Bonheim wrote. He says that Superman is a magnificent feat, a film that makes the Man of Steel fascinating in a way we've rarely seen on film, with a take on the hero that is trenchant, clever, and delightful. Gunn is paying tribute to the past while also making a very clear mark on this world's future, crafting an introduction to the DCU that inherently makes the viewer want to know where this world goes from here. At this point, it's rare for superhero films to give a sense of wonder and a reminder of how beautiful these films can be when executed well. But Gunn has brought optimism, hope, and care back to Superman. It ends up becoming one of the best DC films in years and one of the best movies of the summer. This universe could be great, and Gunn has the light to show the way for where the DCU could go. And that is quite a powerful review of the of Superman. And yeah, so Ross Bonheim review of it actually speaks to, I mean, all the reviews actually speaks to Gunn's ability to carefully craft his stories in his films. And I see Gunn as one who really understands cinema, understands what his strengths are, and is able to bring to bear his knowledge of comic book and his ability to skillfully tell stories on the silver screen together and blend it so beautifully to portray it and to to deliver it on screen. So it is of no surprise that we are receiving such high praise for his works. Granted, or definitely not everybody will like his film because of because of the approach or sensibilities of how he approaches his character. So it's most understandable that not all will like the film, and it as movie being subjective, it's okay for others not to like it. But indeed, James Gunn is a master storyteller. He's an adept filmmaker, and you cannot take that away from him. He knows his source materials well and knows how well to adapt it to the silver screen in such a way that feels authentic and different. So I agree with what Ross Bonheim has to say. I haven't watched it yet. Let me come out clearly, but from I'm speaking I'm giving my thoughts on this as to regard to what I've seen of the trailer and what I've seen of James Gunn's films. So that is the approach I'm going about analyzing it. Hopefully, I'm hoping to watch this soon or see it soon so that I can come and then affirm as to whether what they said is congruent to or is in agreement with what I've seen myself. But these are actually high praise, and I really can say for sure that James Gunn is the right shepherd for this version of DCU, and I think it does work well for me. I've been a Superman fan of the Man of Steel. I mean, in the Man of Steel, which is grounded in reality and grim and dark. But I appreciate what he's doing here, making it different because I wouldn't want all Superman films to be dark and gritty as Man of Steel, even though I appreciated it so much. It's one of my, if I'm not mistaken, for me, It's my best Superman film. I know people may not agree with that, but I also appreciate what Christopher Reeve's Superman because it's iconic in every sense of the word. But for my preference, I always like what Zack Snyder did with Man of Steel, and I'm yet to watch this to know whether I may prefer this even more to Man of Steel or Christopher Reeve's film. But I know one thing for sure that James Gunn would has well will deliver a stellar performance when it comes to Superman. So let's move on to some more stories, and then I'll go on to the Collider. Sorry, what's it called? Rotten Tomatoes to see what the general critics have to say. So USA Today's movie critic Brian Trout wrote that Gans fills his Superman with plenty of action from the title characters flying Johns, filmed as searing, windswept experiences to Superman throwing down with a giant kaiju. But what makes the movie and Supes himself endearing is how the dude tackles any and all problems with empathy and sincerity. Also, in his review, he continued that that said, there are no false notes or wasted energy in making this revamped DC universe stand out from the previous overly dull DCU or the quippy, slick Marvel movies. Superman is more conventional than James Gunn's Guardians flicks or even his DC outings, The Suicide Squad and Pacemaker. Yet he's carried over the unhinged, off-kilter fun of those films. And while Gunn doesn't overdo it with political stakes, themes, and personalities, he certainly drives home the point that kindness is the superpower we all should be using on the regular. Kindness is the superpower that we all should be using on the regular. And yeah, I agree to that. I think what James Gunn I mean, from all these reviews and what I've seen in the trailer, what James Gunn expertly does is to situate this, even though it's a fantasy film, a fictional film in its own bubble, it situates this story in this era where it seems like kindness or being good is a very rare commodity. And I'm glad that film of this nature that has such massive influence on pop culture and a lot of people will get to see it. It has this message for the world so that maybe this may be a call, a call to us all to realize that no, we need to review our actions, particularly on social media, and think about how our actions affect others, negatively, where how our words actually affects others negatively. So I like the fact that the message in there is clear and it stands out. Yeah, the film as a whole, it's fictional, but then every film offers a form of a message or makes us resonate with certain characters and rethink our actions if it need be. Yes, it's not supposed to be a film to teach you morals whatsoever. But at the end of the day, whatever be the case, a film can be a place where it can give us the opportunity to to reflect on our actions. It does sometimes. So I'm glad that this brings about the idea of kindness and perhaps it may inform us as to how to treat others. Likewise. But what I like about this particular review from USA Today's brand is about the fact that James Gunn you know, he doesn't stick to a formulaic kind of filmmaking where every film has to be the same as previous. Yes, you see certain thorough lines as to his sensibilities in the film, but he does well to even differentiate it from what he's done with the Guardians films and his first DC outings in Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. So it is really interesting that yes, a lot of these top critics are noticing how different this film is from the others. Yeah. Let me take maybe one more from here, and then we can go to the Rotten Tomatoes website to check what others have for it. So, Empire's Sophie Butcher has was more critical of the script in her review writing. So Holt is having fun as Luther, dishing out witty comebacks and maniacal screams, as well as genuine flashes of emotion. But there are problems in the writing. Luther lacks depth, portrayed simply as an abusive sociopath who's targeting Superman out of spite and indulging in reckless science at the cost of destroying the world entirely. Supes himself, meanwhile, is almost the pure heart of hero. You want him to be the one that Richard Donner and Christopher Reeve so masterfully achieved in their iteration. But some clunky dialogue and a cocky edge means the character never quite meets the mark. So yeah, this indeed is quite a different take or a different review from what the other critics have said. And I think from her review, it may be so because I think when I watched Robert Meyer Bennett's review, he has watched the film, so I'm sure he brought out the fact that it looks like the film in its entirety it feels shorter. That's what he said, and he even made a statement that he would wish. I mean, he can even watch 1.5 hours more of the film. So meaning that it moves so fast, and possibly they might have edited a lot of scenes out that could give it more flesh and give it more depth to the characters of Lex Luthor, as Sophie was saying, and perhaps, but maybe you can't do away with the clunky dialogue as given to Superman's character. So maybe you can't do away with that, but maybe that could have added more depth to, and maybe not just depth, but layers to why uh, Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor is acting the way he's doing at the moment. So yeah, I'm sure she's speaking true to what she's noticed about it, and that I'm sure when I go and watch it, I may see same as well. So yeah, I like the fact that she has brought in certain critical aspect that perhaps others have not seen, and I'm glad that she's done that. Yeah, so let's move from what the Hollywood Reporter has shown us to what the Rotten Tomatoes website also has to offer among other, critics. So I'll quickly delve into what they have to say. So yeah, let me just this written by Christopher Campbell and Superman First Reviews, a fun comic book movie with old school charm that promises a bright future for the new DCU. So critics say David Corenswet and Richard Brosnahan shine together in James Gunn's colorful and emotional rich adaptation that returns to the roots of the iconic character and gives fans plenty of reasons to be excited about the future. So let's just delve right into some of the critics. And this one, they segment it according to certain, topics or themes in the movie. So let's read. A Superman leaps and bounds above other superhero movies. This is what Matt Singer of Screen Crash had to say. Easily the best movie made in my lifetime. So the best Superman movie made in my lifetime. So I don't know whether I don't know how old he is to have said that. If made within his lifetime, could it be that he wasn't around when the Superman movie of the Christopher Reeve era was made? So meaning that it's likely going to be that from Henry Cavill's Superman to that of Bryan Singer's Superman may be included in what he's saying as the best Superman movie made. The From Owen Gleiberman of Variety says that it falls short of the top tier of superhero cinema. I'd characterize the film as next level good, a roster that includes Iron Man, Thor, Batman Begins, Captain America, and the hugely underrated Iron Man 3. So that's the this is from Owen of Variety. From Scott Phillips Forbes, he says that so far this has been the century of the comic book film. And while Superman isn't one of the best films of the 21st century, it represents the genre well. So that's from Scott Phillips. Let's see what they say about does it do the character justice? Gunn and his team deliver a Superman film that feels worthy of the character's legacy. That's Daniel Schulzman of Solzy at the movies. And he says that Superman has always been an idealist, and this film embraces that part of his character. Scott Phillips of Forbes. This isn't your grandparents' Superman, but it is also truer in method to his on page adventures than anything we've seen on theater screens thus far. That's Trace Sauver of Awards Watch. It also says that is it a welcome change for the superhero genre? And it says that a breath of fresh air in an era saturated with dark anti-heroes, Superman is referentially idealistic, not in a saccharine way, I hope I pronounced the word right, but in a way that feels rebellious, even radical. That is Jamie Broadnax of Black Girl Nerds. Gunn knows that the world has grown weary of comic book film culture, and in the new Superman, he's out to reset not just one studio's fortunes, but the very idea of what a comic book movie is. And that's by Owen Gleiberman of Variety. And there's a satisfaction in a superhero movie that's happy to be this freewheeling and sorry ludicrous. That's a Trace Sauver of Awards Watch. And then when let's move on to David Rooney of the Hollywood Reporter. He says that perhaps its biggest strength is that it sidesteps all the revisionist murk of superheroes on screen in the last decade or two and reverts almost to an enchanting state of childlike wonder. Liz Shannon Miller of Consequence says that the color doesn't feel like just an aesthetic choice. It's a visual promise that this time we are going to have some fun. Yeah, yeah. And also, you have Superman is deeply rooted in a sense of escapism and wonder without fully shedding the issues of our time. Shiraz Faruqi of Cinema Debate. Does this reboot from writer director James Gunn rekindle my love of comic book movies? Not really. It's weighed down by a lot of being there, done that. Okay, so that's Scott Phillips, who has a different opinion as to that. So, is it faithful to its comic book origins? Let's read from Owen Gleiberman Variety. It says that it genuinely feels like a comic book come to life, which is why it treats Superman's powers as the most spectacular and least interesting thing about him. And then from Spencer Perry, comicbook.com says that what makes Superman work is the same thing that has made James Gunn's other adaptations so beloved. As a filmmaker, James Gunn is unafraid to embrace the comic book elements at the heart of the source material. That's yeah. So Gunn has created what may be the single most Silver Age comic book saga ever put to screen, and that is by Siddhant Al Adlakha of Mashable. The film feels like an old school comic book. This Superman brings back the colorful visuals, the humor, the clever quips in the midst of battle, the lightheartedness of the vintage comics, and that is by Scott Phillips. So yeah, there's a lot more that is shared in this article. So I'll leave this article in the comments section below so that if you want to take a look at it, in totality, you can do so to inform your choice of whether you want to go and watch the film or not. But regardless, I think you should go and watch the film to judge for yourself, rather than just watching what's it called, the critics or the views of others online. And I will do same as well. I think in Ghana, I'm sure in other parts of the world, it's being screened actually today. So June 10th of today, is being screened, so you can go and take a look at it in the cinema. July 10th, sorry, July 10th. That is today. Is going to be screened in the cinemas in Ghana, and I'm sure other places as well. So do well to go to the cinemas yourself to watch it for yourself. For from these reviews, whether it was negative or not, or positive or not, I was going to go and watch it anyway myself, hopefully. So do so, and when I do, I'll bring to you my views concerning what James Gunn's film has to offer and whether I agree with what they have said or not. But from little I've seen already, it is exciting and it's even whet my appetite even more. Already I was sold when I watched the trailer and I'd already made up my mind to watch it myself. But I'm glad that others are enjoying the movie in its totality and I've shared their opinion on this. So also soon I have to bring this to an end, and this is a special editorial on Superman and what others have to say concerning their experience watching it. So thank you so much for joining me for this special episode, and I hope you get the opportunity to go and watch it yourself. So thank you once again, and my name is Papa Otu, and this has been the Film Mandate. See you soon.